All right, Chris, thanks for hopping on a quick Zoom. I know we've been talking a lot with clients about what's coming around the corner with the SEC, and obviously they published the exam priorities at the end of 2025, looking ahead to 2026. There's been a lot of things that we've addressed during recurring client calls. I think it makes sense to just kind of walk through some of what we've seen and what we've been sharing with our clients to date.
Definitely. And I think a big difference here is the SEC's removal of two things. No longer are they specifically calling out private fund advisors, and no longer are they specifically calling out digital assets. That doesn't mean that both of those types of firms won't fall under a lot of these other areas, but maybe an indication of where the SEC is heading with their focus.
Yeah, and I was on a webinar the other day and heard something similar that discussed really this is to the point where it's no longer new, it's no longer novel, and the SEC is just casting a wide net as they would of all private fund advisors and not isolating or keying in on those specific digital asset clients. That doesn't mean the target's not off your back, but it just means you won't be moved to the top of the list potentially for those exams.
Exactly. I think sort of integrating them with the rest of the advisory universe.
Yeah, and I think our clients are probably tired of hearing this, but we use the phrase low-hanging fruit often when we're talking about exams. Those things where the SEC comes in, they look at the policies and procedures, and they immediately create a checklist of, for this area, you say you do X, Y, and Z, prove out that you've done it and you've documented it. And I think that's something that we try to reiterate to clients repeatedly that this is important. This is why we're trying to stress this because it is that easy roadmap for the SEC to just pick at and identify potential weaknesses and deficiencies in a compliance program.
That's right. And it's great that you brought up a roadmap because that's partly what this is, right? Their exam priorities are a roadmap. This is what we're going to look at. This is what our focus will be on.
Yeah. So I think I kind of want to go into a few of the topics that really stood out. We've already touched on one loosely, but disclosures matching reality. I think, we've seen it. We've seen it in exams and in deficiencies even recently, where the SEC comes back and says, in your marketing materials, these disclosures don't match the material in the slide, or they're potentially lacking. In the part 2A, we've seen the same where we are missing some things or maybe not matching up exactly what we're doing. So that's certainly an area of focus that as we get into ADV season, full swing of the ADVs, we'll be mindful about the 2As particularly.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think an important point there is that runs the gamut, right? From the more basic, well, this might not have matched on this particular page of this marketing material, to in the 2A, are we disclosing to investors the correct way that we're approving investments, approving expenses, the expenses that can be charged to the fund, all of those things sort of on a sliding scale of maybe it's just a sentence missing in a deck all the way up to are we doing the right thing with investment approvals and investment committee meetings are really what the SEC is talking about here. So it's much broader than just is it disclosures on a marketing material or something like that.
Absolutely. And you touched on it right there, where another area that we see often, and it's repeated year over year. So we see the SEC stressing this, but fees and expenses and allocation controls specifically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this is what we call their bread and butter. They love it. They will ask about it in every exam, no matter the stage or asset type or client type that you have. And if you look at enforcement actions every year, they are getting several firms on fee allocation, expense allocation. It is something they are laser focused on from an investor fairness perspective.
Absolutely. We highlight those during trainings as that takeaway. It's not just returning overcharged fees to LPs. It's also probably a fine on top of that. So the double whammy, as we often say during those training sessions.
There are a lot of things that the SEC will ask for in exams or bring up in their exam priorities that are somewhat fact-finding missions, right? The SEC, as much as they want to regulate the space, they want to know it as well. They want to show up to an exam and know what they should be looking for with AI, with cyber, with how you're conducting vendor due diligence. So part of these exams are, of course, making sure you're operating within the Advisors Act and the rules around it. But a big part of that is the SEC becoming knowledgeable. How are advisors using these things? So with that, I think a lot of the AI and cyber concerns for now for the SEC are vendor management, right? Are they fitting into the same framework, the same way you would do vendor due diligence on an important vendor in any other category? AI should be treated exactly the same way, collecting documentation, making sure that your information is secure, making sure that investor information is secure, very importantly, with the updates to Reg SP.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of that, what have you been telling clients around how to get ready for that exam? Maybe they were registered a year ago, or it's been 4 or 5 years since the SEC came through for their first exam or their second exam. What are you telling clients on calls on how to get ready for these things?
Yeah, I think the easiest one is for clients who have been examined before. If you received a deficiency letter, look at that deficiency letter and fix those problems. That's where the SEC is going to start when they come the second time. They want to know that you're taking their feedback seriously. But for everyone else, or if you did not receive a deficiency letter the first time, congratulations, it is important that you look through things like this, the exam priorities, what is out there publicly that the SEC might have said, whether that's press releases or updates to FAQs, really to focus what we should change or what maybe we should have enhanced documentation around, really trying to find where those gaps are between what we're doing in our compliance program currently and what the SEC's expectations are.
Absolutely, and well said. I think I echo a lot of what you just ran through with my own clients in trying to get them comfortable. There's never going to be a situation where I would say have all of your documentation ready, take a template response or request letter, and let's just have all of the documentation so you can turn it over day one. But it is good to know where documents live, who has access to what. Maybe there are some things that we're doing but not documenting as well as we should at present, and we should get that, get in the habit of those things so that when we do have that 2 week turnaround for a document production, it's not as much of a scramble as it has been for others.
I think that's exactly right. And I think a big point here is if you think you're ready, if you think, you look at your program and you think I've assessed all these gaps, then have a mock exam done, right? Have someone else come in and really try to poke holes the way that the SEC would.
That's a great point, and something we've done for a handful of our clients in addition to an annual review, something a little more stringent, a little more time sensitive, time compressed that puts them under the guise of an actual exam.
Yeah.
I think on my end, the effectiveness of the advisor's compliance program always, I won't say it confuses me or it's fully misunderstood, but it's something that is a little squishy. And I think one area that we highlight with our clients, especially our smaller clients, where we have somebody that's a dual-hatted CFO, CCO, or managing member and CCO, is are you properly supported? Can you run the compliance program given the resources you have? And we've seen that push back a couple times in exams where they say, you're splitting your focus. Do you feel adequately empowered to be the CCO? And that's something that I think we highlight to a lot of our clients to make sure that's not an issue during exams.
Agree.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been great to kind of connect and make sure that we're aligned as we go into 2026 and we continue talking to our clients about this. I know for anyone watching, if you have a question, any issues that may come up, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or send us an email at complaintsinfo@silverreg.com.